All right, so in this video, I want to dive in a little further to the mystery shop. Just as far as the mystery shop's been updated, now we have a daily, a weekly, and a monthly tab. I just want to kind of go over each of these sections, which of these make sense to purchase, and which just aren't really that good of a value. So I'm going to do the daily shop real quick. It's not going to be anything too crazy. As far as these top three ones, I mean, where we're typically when it has an option to purchase stuff with gold early in the game, I wouldn't really do it much, just because even while these these experience shards might seem kind of cool, you can farm them through the game. And then if you're that early game anyways, you're probably going to just be wanting to save your gold for upgrading your talents. It's only 32,000 though. It's not going to make that big of a difference. So you can either way. I mean, if you just want to collect these, try and max out all your slimes, 32,000 isn't going to make or break the bank. That's the same thing with these ornament materials, or just any of the just equipment material pieces anyways. Just overall, it doesn't make a lot of sense to purchase them. Later in the game, they're actually a little nicer just because you're going to be using them in the forge and stuff. But really, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to purchase just because you can farm them anyways. But late game, you have plenty of gold. You don't really need to worry. These gear fragments, so these ingots, these are going to be used for the blacksmith as well. Early game, you don't really want to spend them. Use gold to spend them. Then late game, 30 isn't a ton. You can go and purchase them if you want. Now, as far as all these things that cost gems, these equipment, I wouldn't really spend any of your gems on these equipments. There's not a ton of value there. Same with like lucky raffle tickets, as well as I believe these might sometimes rotate over to the Gygus battle tickets. The Gygus battle tickets can be nice to help you farm gold early on in the game. And it has a chance to get you some elemental shards as well, depending on which of the Gygus battles you're doing. But really, once again, I wouldn't really recommend either of those. Not that great of a value. And that's really kind of the case with all these gem purchases. Epic Barbarian Axe, that's not going to be worth it. An S tier epic piece of equipment, like stuff like the Pendant of Moonlight, anything you can get from the epic chest already, it's not going to be that really good of a value. Slime stones, I wouldn't really do any either just as well, just because these fire slime stones, you can just farm them from the Gygus battles. That's 1,000 gems. That's a lot of gems worth. You're probably going to be a bit better off just trying to do epic chest pulls, trying to get some S tier equipment up to mythic, just because that's going to help you a lot more power wise. Now, hopping on to the weekly shop, and this is where it kind of gets a little more interesting, just as far as which of these are actually worth it. So this first one, we can just watch an ad and get it for free. But then we have like these experience shards, these equipment materials. I wouldn't recommend purchasing these. I mean, really early on, those experience shards might seem kind of helpful, but you can farm those anyways. I wouldn't really spend your gems on them, because there are better uses of gems. This random epic piece of gear, it's 400 gems, but it is just a random epic piece of gear. It's not S tier or anything, so really not that worth it, just because your gems early on in the game, you're going to be mainly prioritizing just using them for trying to get S tier pieces of equipment, like the Dominator set or the Thunder God set, that you can't farm from like the normal stage 10 or 11. So stuff you can't farm from the stages. So actually just equipment here for gems doesn't make that much sense. As previously mentioned, these Gygus battle tickets can be nice for gold farming. I mean, you can purchase a couple of them per day, but as we get to later, it's good for gold farming, but it's not that good for much else. You're probably going to be a little better off just saving your gems for other things. Now, this next one where you get a random epic rune, 4 of these super keys, or like these keys for the epic chests, and then 40 equipment materials. I'm not really going to consider those. But when you look at the value of these keys, for 1,200 gems, this is actually a bit expensive. But getting a random epic rune can be kind of nice early on. There are some better value ones, though, for getting these epic keys. So really, as far as this goes, I wouldn't necessarily consider this one, just because you're going to be able to farm a lot more runes later on. Then you might just get stuck with a lousy epic rune. But super early on, this could kind of make sense, but I just would kind of stick away from it. Now, this next one, where we get 10 of these Starlight Tears, 50 Magic Crystals, 25 Elemental Shards, this is only good for one reason, and that is for these Starlight Tears. These golden tears are really hard to get, but for 2,400 gems, it's actually a pretty good value. If you wanted to go in this will just kind of be important as well for one of the monthly things to consider. So if you wanted to convert your gems into Crystal Hearts, it's 600 gems per 30 Crystal Hearts. So to get 180 Crystal Hearts, you need 3,600 gems. And so that's kind of your conversion rate and price point you should be looking at. So if I got 180 Crystal Hearts, would turn into 10 Starlight Tears. So 3,600 gems for 10 Starlight Tears. So when we go back and then just look at that mystery shop in the weekly tab, when we see we can actually get, we can get 10 of these Starlight Tears for 2,400 gems. That's just actually a really good value. So now early game, I wouldn't recommend doing this because you are going to want to just focus more on these super keys. But later game, these Starlight Tears are a pretty good value, and so this is where it would make sense to purchase those. Now onto this next one, where we can actually get a random S tier epic piece of equipment, and then 15 of these keys. And now this 15 key price points where it gets pretty cool, because if we go into the shop, and then we can kind of look at, if we were to do 10 epic chest pulls, it's 2,200 gems, so you're 220 gems per key. Now going back over to this mystery shop, 220 times 15, that's math, and my head's not really feeling it today. But we're like 1,100, so we're like roughly 3,300 gems, I want to say. So it's not that bad of a value, actually. You're getting a guaranteed S tier piece of equipment. So while it's not as good as a value as some of these other just epic key ones you can get later on, I'll show you, this actually isn't terrible. It's pretty decent. Now finally, here we can see they did revamp the artifact key just graphic, but this one's really good just because artifact keys, there's no other ways to get them other than using your league points that you earn from competing in the league. So this is, later game, especially early game, you're going to have just less gems, especially if you are free to play. But these artifact keys can be really helpful just as far as unlocking artifacts, leveling them up. It does give you some star essence and refining stones as well, but I will definitely be purchasing this one. Now onto the monthly packs, and then I'm going to watch this ad real quick. This first one, where you get some of these premium keys, I'd ignore that. Now this second one, where we get 5 super keys, 5 elemental stones, and then 10 of these elemental shards, this is where we kind of previously looked at how much it would cost. So you're 220 gems per epic key. So usually these 5 super keys, 5 chest pulls, would cost about 1,100 gems. Here we're actually only getting it for 1,000 gems, and we're also getting some extra slime stones and elemental shards. So if you're early on in the game, you're trying to get a bunch of those S tier pieces of equipment, this is a definite just must buy. It gives you a really good value. Later in the game, you don't need to purchase this if you have all the S tier pieces of equipment you have. It just doesn't become as important. This next one, once again, Gygus battle tickets. They're helpful for farming gold and slime stones kind of situationally. For 8 Gygus battle tickets, so that's 250 gems per Gygus battle ticket. It can be a pretty decent value if you're trying to farm gold and slime stones, but other than that, I probably wouldn't recommend it just because your gems are going to be a little better gear for other stuff. You can farm the gold eventually. It's not that big of an issue. Lucky raffle tickets, I really wouldn't consider. Now this next one, random S tier epic piece of gear, 15 super keys. So once again, we're over 3,000 gems just for the super keys. I want to say we're like 3,300 gems from my rough math just for the super keys. If you were to purchase the chest pulls just through the shop tab. So actually going over, and if we go back here over to the monthly tab, so you're actually getting a bit of a discount on the epic, on those epic, your super keys for the epic chest pulls. So similar to this one, where you get 5 epic chest pulls, this is a good value if you're early in the game. You're trying to get S tier gear. For this next one, 10 Starlight Tears. And this is where it gets important as far as when we looked at that conversion rate, as far as you can use 3,600 gems to get 10 gold tiers within that Crystal Heart shop. So really where this costs 4,000 gems, and if you're at the point where you're trying, you do get these magic crystals and elemental shards, but if you're late game and at the point where it makes sense to try and go for golden tiers anyways, this just isn't that good of a value. You can get a better value from that Crystal Heart shop. Then this next one, this is a similar case where if you plot out your like 3,600 gems for 3,600 gems per 6 of those mana potions, using that same, you get 6 mana potions for 3,600 gems from that Crystal Heart shop, using that kind of similar conversion rate. This is a really good value if you're trying to get mana potions. So this is probably a better bet than trying to save your Crystal Hearts for them, or using gems to get Crystal Hearts and then converting them. But later in the game, I mean, just using these mana reroll potions, you are banking somewhat on chance as far as getting a good rune reroll. So I'm personally not going to buy this, but if you're early in the game and only have like 1 or 2 mythic runes and they're not that good, this can actually be a pretty good value. For this final one on the monthly pack, we have 20 artifact keys. And really just once again, I'm going to purchase this just because your sources for artifact keys are very limited right now. This is going to be nice just because there's no other way other than League to get a lot of these artifact keys, other than like the one free artifact key pull you get per day. Then we have this every 7 days you can get some, but that's just going to be a nice thing to purchase. You can only do it once per month, but it's going to be nice just to kind of help your artifact rate and help you get more of those. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.